My name is Nick Socrat. I am currently the owner and operator of Douglas Orchard and Farm, and I started working at the Natick Organic Farm when I was around 8. Put in some programs, and I worked under. It's so funny because it all just seems like a memory now, but I think Jed was his name, and he was there a long time ago, and you know gave me the it's at that point when you're 8 years old, a lot of it's kind of a faded memory. But I started then. I remember working on like moving meat chickens and then playing with some of the steaks like they were bows and arrows and had to be talked to, you know, when you're a kid. And I worked my way up to the working farmers where I ended up running um, the farm stand on the road a whole bunch. That kind of became my main thing until I got too bored and carried away again as a child. And they had to have me do something else. But um, then I was kind of running crews in the working farmers, and then went to the teen work crew, and then ended up working with Mark a whole bunch there. And that was an awesome experience. He is an extremely skilled builder, and that was really cool to work with him. And again, it gives you kind of, as a growing young man, the discipline that you probably need as well. So, because again, you get carried away when you are given the freedom to work on projects. So, but yeah, I remember building the farm stand that's up at the farm right now. Um, the one where all the produce is sold, and then working on the gnome home in the back, and all the rabbit coops and the turkey coops, the pig coops. The I probably had my hands in everything. And then I remember I went to school for environmental science, and I remember one day I got sick of sitting in a lab. I left early and went back to the Natick farm, and that's where I found out. Well, I didn't find out at the farm, but I found out about the Stockbridge program at UMass Amherst, and then they told me I needed to complete one more internship and complete my biology, and then I ended up going to the Stockbridge program at UMass Amherst and did my schooling there. And right when I finished my last math exam, my dad calls me up and says, "There's a farm available down the road. We should check it out." And that is now the farm that we operate. So the Natick Organic Farm has definitely touched me in a way of, when you start off early enough, things don't necessarily gross you out. You don't kind of run away from jobs. When an animal is hurt and injured, you don't say, "Ew, that's gross." You fix the problem. Um, digging, weeding, learning that the monotonous tasks can also be the most enjoyable when you put your music and your books on and your headphones and get to work. So again, I've probably over explained the question, um, but yeah. So, and then of course I must mention Linda was an insanely big figure in my life. You know, being the way she is she was wonderful. Teaching, but yet being very stern. I think that's extremely important in learning. Um, mentors, like having just wonderful mentors as a kid is extremely important. I think a lot of kids um, lack that. They lack the ability to even find someone that can, take you under their wing and teach you. So it was definitely my parents. We lived in Natick, right near the Natick Common, and you know, it was the most suited summer camp for someone like me who had endless energy and couldn't sit still at a desk. And I think that's again a huge problem we have in nowadays society is, you know, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to feel stupid. And I couldn't sit still at a desk, and I was always the problem. So coming to the Natick farm as a summer camp was a huge help in that. And I think that's what my mom thought. So she signed me up for the program there, and I liked it and just kept going back, and then ended up being my summer job, and then continued from there. So I'll have to thank my parents for that one. One of the things I experienced looking for jobs at other farms was there was always this super fast paced attitude. I remember I was denied a job because I'm more broadly built, and he said that the Natick farm was a fantasy farm because it was paid for a lot by the town, so that I didn't understand the pressures of running a real business with real money that like their families' lives depended on it. But I think that was super important in learning because if you learn from a farm that's all profit based and it's super stressful, and if you don't do something right, you're costing this man or woman their ability to feed their child, that is a scary position to be in. I've had piglets die under my watch because I was building a water catchment system, and they, you know, as a business owner, I always realize that it's no matter what your employee does or volunteer does, it's your fault. So I get to blame him in saying that he didn't let me know that I should put stones at the bottom of the water dish because the piglets, a couple of them drowned because it was too deep. So, and I cost him and his family money. So, I mean, he was great about it, but I think the freedom to be able to learn, to be able to um, I guess not have that stress where you feel like it's more work than learning. This was more learning than work, especially starting out. And then it gets more serious as you get on the teen work crew. Um, but again, not, everyone's still learning. Some people just do this. We're doing it for fun. Some wanted to do this for a hobby. Some wanted to do it as a career, and they could take it as serious as they wanted it, as long as no one was getting hurt, obviously. So I hope that was a big part. Being able to take it slow and learn is key. The big draw should be the education. I mean, any farm can produce products. Every farm does. That's kind of what they do. But the education part is absolutely huge. And then being able to meet new friends. I mean, um, I think I don't know if I was in the teen work crew yet, but Lynn Smyrney ended up moving into the farm. And he, to this day, I mean, he came to my wedding. He's one of my best friends. We bonded at the farm. We became amazing friends. I'm friends with Zane. Their mother's a sweetheart. And then Alex. And so meeting the social aspect is extremely important too. I mean, Ethan Higgins, I think is his last name. I haven't seen him in the longest time, but he was definitely a friend and a role model, whether he realized it or not. Because I always kind of looked up to him. Because what he was, I don't know, he was always seemed to be like the leader of the cruise, and then until he left, and then I kind of took over. Um, but yeah, so the social aspect is extremely important too. But the education, I would say that's the huge part. I think one of them that sticks out is definitely raising the structure of the new like farm stand up at the farm. That was my first day in the teen work crew. No, actually, my first day in the teen work crew is we buried a dead goat that got its neck snapped in one of the feeders. It's kind of snapped its own neck. So that was the first thing I did, and the second was help raise the structure. But yeah, I think the goat one was definitely super bizarre. I mean, it's not foreign to me because I was used to that. I mean, chickens die and definitely turkeys because um, they're pretty dumb. Love them to death, but they are just. I've seen a turkey run into the pig enclosure and a pig just kind of. I mean, it's graphic. This is the stuff with farming that like kids need to. A lot of parents try to hide their kids away from the reality of life and death and food and where it comes from. And even if you're vegan and vegetarian, you understand that everything has to things have to die for you to get food. Um, but yeah, the turkey ran into the pig enclosure, and the pig was just sitting there and just grabbed it, hit it against the wall, and just ate it. And people kept being like, "Oh, pigs are vegetarians," and it's like, no, they're not. I saw that when I was very young. Um, but definitely the most meaningful was yeah, raising that structure. I think that was super cool with Mark. Because you're joining a crew of people you don't necessarily know, and being there and helping and really pulling that up, and then working on the gnome home. um, was pretty amazing. I mean, there's so many like little stories in between, but I can't pinpoint any of them right now. I'm sure they'll come to me right as this Zoom ends, but uh, so many good times, so many good memories. I mean, going to the farm after hours, hanging out with Lynn. I remember now they're coming back to me. So Lynn and I, we were hanging out where Eddie the goat. I don't know if he's still with us. He might have passed, but um, I was there when he was born, and he was the sweetest thing. And then, of course, he got aggressive. So, two stories I remember having. Looking at, I don't know who told these two young girls to go feed Eddie while it during mating season. He's just started charging at them, so I had to run in there and kind of just like grab him by the horns, and that was absolutely wild. But that was it's scary because a male goat just fully running at like smaller children is very scary. But so he was in an enclosure over by where the turkeys are, and we're hanging out there, and I just hear bang, bang, and then boom, and then the whole side of the shelter falls off, and Eddie had knocked it down, and he was just standing there, and Lynn and I are like, holy crap. So then we go to push the side of the shelter back up and nail it back up, but that was never a dull moment. And then when I was chased by the mother cow because I had to go feed them, and the mother cow, I thought I was a threat, and I think there were so many locals there that day, and just watching me just fully sprint out of her enclosure because she thought I was going to hurt the baby. So that was amusing. But yeah, so many stories. I mean, I was there for uh, just over 10 years. So I mean, that's a huge chunk of my life. I'm 30 now, so um yeah, it's nice to have a place. And I think one of the big parts of farming is seeing the effect you can have on a piece of land over the years. And that's why I tended to stick to one farm. When I didn't like jumping around to different farms too much because I want to see my effect on the land. And then now owning our farm for 9 years, the differences that you can make in 9 years is extraordinary. Um, and I find that one of the most fascinating parts of farming. No, I just want to thank the farm. I want to thank Linda and Mark and Jed. If any of them, please come visit my farm and see what you helped me, do to this land, whether you know it or not. I'm grateful for the friends that I made. I just hope they keep up with the education. I think that is, produce what you need to produce. I think a lot of people really love um, getting food from the Natick farm and seeing. The reason I started my farm is I worked on too many farms that did not let people onto the property. You know, I think one of the biggest problems with words like in our, the Natick organic farm is an organic farm, but just because it's organic doesn't mean that I don't remember spraying a single chemical when I worked at the native farm on the vegetables, but I've worked on organic farms that were spraying constantly, and I'd ask the owner, what are you spraying? And he's like, that's none of your business. And I'm like, I'm a student at school, I want to learn what you're spraying. And he's like, that's not for you to know. And then you're not letting people in your fields. And I just I think, yeah, the not only education but seeing is believing, and going to the farm. And as much as a lot of the farmers hate, but ask the questions: what are you feeding the turkeys, what are you feeding the pigs? And if there are orchards, what are you spraying on the orchards, what are you spraying on the vegetables? I think these are the things that people need to know, because when they go home and they grow their own vegetables and they get pests on their vegetables, they just go to Home Depot and buy Seven, which is like an insecticide, and they spray it on their vegetables because they think with fruit trees you're not necessarily spraying anything on the fruit itself, but when you're spraying vegetables you're spraying it on food. Like if you're spraying any sort of pesticide on a leaf, even if it's neem oil, you're going to then eat it. And I think education of farming will go a long way in the community. And lots of people, if they're in a position where they're lucky enough to be able to have their own garden at home, it'd be nice for them to have that little background of, I grew up with, working at the Natick farm and I kind of understand what they were throwing down because, whoever was in charge was explaining enough, explaining in depth, what are they adding to the soil, all of that. And it's amazing. I give these pruning classes and I talk about soil health for the first half, and people are like, I thought this was a pruning class. And I'm like, if you have an unhealthy soil, you have an unhealthy plant, then you have to spray more pesticides and then it becomes an issue. And 99% of people don't know how to responsibly use something that's going to, you know, like strawberries. You go to the pick your own strawberries and, they have to spray fungicides like constantly because it's rainy and it's wet. And if they lose that crop, that's their livelihood. So, um, like right now, we're trying to grow strawberries in the greenhouse with spraying nothing. And I've done it outside. I've tried black plastic. I've tried all these things. And, you know, growing strawberries out spraying is very difficult. But once we figure it out, we'll have a premium product that's, safe to eat. There's organic and then there's beyond organic where you're like spraying nothing. So, but making money in vegetables is also extremely difficult. Um, so I just want to end saying that I'm grateful for the Natick Organic Farm. I really hope that they keep up with the education and the programs for the kids. And it gives, structure. You need to, especially as you get into the teen work crew and the working farmers, that's when kids need the discipline and need structure and need purpose the most. And I think that is absolutely critical, and that's what the Native Organic Farm gives to the community.